What happens if we dare to tear off the mask of professionalism and actually risk showing up for real? I'm your host, Miriam Hartness, and this is Unprofessionalism.
I've always thought of myself as a good girl. I call them momentum moves. The things that actually will move the needle in your business are messaging a possible client, connecting with someone, replying, sending a proposal, following up with someone who said they were in, but they haven't done. Those are the things that I don't want to chase and I don't want to be difficult and so on. But actually, it is professional, coming back to your language. Professionalism is, you've said you want to work with me. We've said, follow up. That's normal. A business would do that. But because we're our own solo business, it's so caught up in our identity and the personal brand, and it's me and I'm selling me, and what if they don't like me?
Hi, Anna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Miriam. Really excited to dig into this topic of unprofessionalism.
Yeah, and I had to quickly hit the record button because we already got into a conversation such juicy topics.
Definitely. Make sure we record it for the listeners.
Yeah, you're a fellow podcaster, 370 episodes in. We're recording end of December.
Yeah, so I launched it December 2018, so it was a huge milestone then, and of course now, it's an interesting one that you can keep it going for so long. And as we were just talking, thinking about how can you make sure it's still exciting for you and still serving you, and of course the audience as well.
Yeah, and how can we maintain this energy and also for the guest and the excitement, curiosity. And just a quick introduction. You started like a rocket with a Oxford University master degree, and then almost a decade in corporate in brand and head of digital, and then now almost a decade of solopreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big shift there, and now you're working with solopreneurs and helping them to escape the 9-to-5, the box, the professional or maybe the corporate box, however you want to call it.
Yeah. And there are two dimensions to that. There's the actual literal box, as I discovered, of leaving the structure of the job, but then there's the mindset and the behaviors and the patterns, and that's the real work, right?
Yeah, that's the real work. The other one is easy.
It's easy to quit your job.
Yeah, it's just your calendar and you do it, but how to escape it? Yeah.
Okay.
And before getting into that, I would love to start with the question or the invitation for you to share an anecdote when you have been unprofessional, in air quotes, and it turned out to be the best thing you've ever done.
Well, it's impossible not to think of that big dramatic moment of quitting my job. And it wasn't really dramatic because it was just kind of a natural, instinctive thing, but it was very anti me and what I would usually do. So I've always thought of myself as a good girl. As you said, you talked about starting as a rocket, but it was more, I very quickly at school learned to perform and to get the good grades. And it was top of my class, and I graduated valedictorian from this American school, went to Oxford. It was all very tick the box, do the thing, perform. And so leaving, I did talk to everybody I could possibly talk to, hoping somebody would give me permission to leave. And of course, some people said, great idea, amazing, good luck. And a lot of people said, what on earth are you thinking? It's crazy. So I'm really proud of that moment of really being sort of anti-professionalism in the big sense of professional in our society is full-time job, 9-to-5, used to be at least dress in a corporate way, show up, do the thing, climb the ladder, have the house, the car, etc. that goes with it, right? So for me, that was a big dramatic kind of macro shift.
Yeah. And to give up on the possibility for the next raise, for the next step on the career, and the prestige, the status that comes along when you work for a big multinational company.
And that was really hard.
Of having on their business card.
That's it. And I still say, a lot of us still say X-P&G on our LinkedIn because you kind of hold on to that. It is important. And the first few projects I worked on, that really was my ticket in. They respected that company. And so you can live on that even after leaving. But those first few conferences I went to, I remember it was really hard to say, oh, what I do now. It took me a long time to be able to say, I'm a coach, I'm a writer, it was, I used to work at P&G. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, but you can't keep saying that 10 years later, can you? So you hold on to that identity for so long, because it's, especially talking to other corporate people, you want to anchor yourself in the prestige and the title and the status. It becomes a vacuum when you strip that away.
That is so interesting. And I 100% did the same. Oh, I'm a recovering academic. Oh, I was in academia, PhD, all this kind of, because it felt raw, vulnerable, fragile, whatsoever, or uncomfortable to actually say, okay, I'm a freelancer figuring it out.
Yeah, well, exactly that. They're figuring out. I'm in this hippie phase and it's exciting, but I'm not quite bold enough to admit that. So yes, I'm an academic, and don't worry, I do have a good degree, and I'm not crazy, right? You're always kind of qualifying what you're doing to show that, yeah, I have those credentials and I'm a respectable professional person, and I'm doing this on top.
Do you remember the moment where you could make the shift and realize, yes, maybe I'm ex-P&G, but actually here I am, a coach, a consultant?
Well, bizarrely, I think there's different seasons and different stages of that, because initially there was that I landed into, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I did digital marketing consulting, basically the same work, but more flexibly, which was amazing. And so at that time, obviously, that was very relevant. Then I kind of quit my consulting, insofar as you can quit your own job, and went fully hippie. And then I completely let go of that. And I was just traveling and learning about coaching and blogging and in very different worlds. And then I came to, actually, I need to earn money. So I started thinking, how can I reconcile my old me and all the experience and network and everything that I did love about that work with also these new insights and skills and wanting to do more meaningful work. So what I see with my clients often is at the initial phase, they're rebelling completely. And I have one at the moment against her banking, or I don't want to work with those people. I don't want to write on LinkedIn because they'll see and what will they think and so on. But relatively quickly we go, actually, those are really important connections. And the fact that I have 2 decades of experience in this industry is not something just to rip apart and forget about, right? So you then begin to come to terms with that experience, but on your own terms. So rather than going back and having to perform again, the shift then is, okay, I can be me and my authentic self and have my boundaries and come at this differently, maybe wear what I want to wear and work the hours I want to work and still leverage that experience. And that's then really powerful. We don't have to, as I always quite flippantly say, quit our job and move to Bali to become a yoga instructor. We can continue building on the experience and expertise we have and live with more freedom and flexibility and authenticity.
Yeah. And with that actually comes the challenge that you quickly mentioned before we hit record, that it's one thing to change the structure and to say, okay, I'm starting this new life. I'm creating my own box, my own profession. But then the mindset that comes with it of actually following through, not waiting for permission or giving ourselves permission. That's the real difficult work because of all the judgment of, if I only start my day at 10 a.m., I'm not professional. Okay? Not taken seriously. If I work on my pajamas all day, I cannot take myself seriously. So how do you help your clients in this regard to work on the mental model? And maybe, is it acceptable? Can we work in our pajamas?
Yeah. Well, I don't actually. I foolishly get dressed every day. I know that's maybe a mistake, but I I do the school drop off with the kids, so I am sort of visible at least. But that's exactly it. For me, in my early years, both for me and with my clients, my first book was Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5. It was all very much about escaping the 9 to 5, quitting your job. But as I said, both for me, as the years passed, and I matured and my business matured, and as I worked with different types of clients, you realize it's what happens next that matters. And in the first months, even years, you can and you need to almost just kind of learn and try and say yes to everything. But then there comes a point where you're like, hang on a second, you sort of hit a plateau. You can't keep doing that. You have 15 different offers. You said yes to this kind of work over here and that over there. You're probably not charging as much as you should be. You're working evenings, even though you said you didn't want to work evenings, and you go, oops, the freedom and flexibility that I'd wanted isn't there. Or maybe the work I'm doing is actually, I'm once again conforming to what I think I should be doing for corporate. In fact, I have a client at the moment I've been working with, and he's created a really successful business. He's made, 260K in sales on his book. He's got 70,000 visitors to his website, but it's all what he thought he should build. It's the website that he thought he should do this big thing because that's what the big guys do. And I need to build this and I have to all the content, and I have to hire someone to do this. And I should write that book. I should make it. Every time we talk, this should. And it's really interesting to then, hang on a second, this is now your business. You are already financially secure, in fact. We're a bit worried about breaking what's working, I suppose. But if you can take kind of a couple of steps back to then, hopefully launch forwards, you can simplify things, work on your mindset. I'm actually my boss. I get to say no. I do get to have a lie-in if I want to, that's really powerful. But that just takes more time, both to break the mindset and then to look at how you can rejig your business model to make sure that supports how you actually want to be living.
Yeah. And getting rid of the good girl, good boy syndrome. Yeah, the shoulds are massive. Is it professional to be a good girl?
I remember when I first started my job, well, first of all, I got the feedback that I wasn't asking enough questions because I thought I should know everything, which is absurd because I was the most junior person in the organization. I'd never heard of Procter & Gamble. I knew nothing about marketing. I'd never had a job. So to think that I need to know everything is just crazy.
You end up there.
Very accidentally. But I had studied international relations. I wanted to work in the United Nations. I was in Geneva in Switzerland. And I'd applied to lots of jobs and I hadn't got so far, I suppose. And, you've got your student debt and so on. And then the one private sector job I applied to wanted me. I had the interview on Monday, got the job on Wednesday, and, then I started. So I think my rationale at the time was, okay, I'll learn marketing in the private sector and then I'll bring those skills over into the public sector. And I have, friends who've done that. I have a client, in fact, who has done that. And I've always admired her and I never did it. For whatever reason, I think because once you're in that container, it then becomes scary again. I kind of half-heartedly applied to a few jobs in that world. But if I had really cared, I should obviously have really set my mind to it. And in England in particular, it's very common that we study one thing. In fact, I have a friend I just had lunch with yesterday. She studied genetics or something amazing, medical, very, very advanced. She's then worked in banking. And now, amazingly, with 2 young children, she's decided to retrain, which is so exciting because, in your 30s, 40s, that's a huge decision, but so meaningful to finally get to go, hang on, I'm going to work another 30 years. It would be nice if I did something that felt true to me and taking a little bit financial risk maybe, but really thinking what matters to me.
And I think with the maturity, then to know that we don't need to please anyone. We don't need to have the career for someone else. So there's a totally different motivation behind our actions, the different way to approach potential clients because we have this integrity. We know what we are talking about and don't try, as you just started your story of, I cannot admit that I don't know enough yet. I'm not asking any question because we should know it all.
Yeah.
Who said that? So where did it come from that you thought you should know it all?
Well, and in fact, your original question was, is it professional to be a good girl? And that comes from school, definitely. I'm writing a Substack now about the anchoring in the, it comes from stories from our parents. It comes from, schooling, of course, the educational system. There is a right answer. You get the tick, you get the gold star, and in fact, it serves you, right? At school, it served me because I was top of the class. I got a good university. I got the job because of probably the university, even though it was unrelated and so on. In the real world, and certainly working for yourself, it doesn't serve you because me working away here in the corner isn't going to get me to where I want to be. Just working hard and hoping that someone's going to notice that I'm amazing over here, unfortunately, doesn't work as a solopreneur. And in fact, one of the first books I remember from P&G somebody had was Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And, and I never read the book, but even just the title was like, that's quite interesting because it's not enough just to work away and tick all the boxes anymore. Actually, you need to do a bit of, dare I say, networking, have exposure to the right leaders to get those promotions so they know who you are, make sure your image is right. There's so many sort of things that feel a bit like, oh, I don't want to play that game. But at the same time, that's the reality of the job market inside your company. If you're changing roles, it's so much about relationships and so on now, and so just doing the work is almost assumed that you're great at your job.
Yeah.
So what? It needs to be more than that. And as you said, who are you doing it for? For me, the biggest realization, I think, has been that success isn't the external markers and the big dramatic. Obviously, we're recording this now at the end of the year, so it's these moments of these are all my amazing achievements. I ran a marathon and I published a book and I did the TED talk and all that stuff, and of course that's exciting. But when I published my last book, I was so disappointed. I think I was quite ill and I didn't really do a big thing out of it. I just kind of got out, and of course the world doesn't change. You publish your book and it's like, okay, now what? Whereas true success is super personal, and it's how you feel, and it's stuff that other people can't see. So they can see if you've got a Range Rover out in the front and your big house and your beautiful clothes or whatever, but they can't see how you're waking up every morning and dreading your job, or, feeling guilty because you're not seeing the children, or, you're feeling unhealthy because you're just kind of eating and drinking lots to cope and so on, right? Whereas that's how you feel. And that, again, is something I have to work really hard with myself to remind myself that for me is success, being present and feeling like I'm in the right place and content.
Yeah, because this was the first reason why we went solo, I guess.
100%.
And still, I also realized it took me a couple of years to realize that this system of how I would measure my success is totally inapplicable to what I'm doing. I'm either replicating what I have learned from, I never worked in corporate, but what I've learned from manager magazines, right? Or what I'm reading about in the solopreneur spaces. That you have to grow your list, you have to have so many people on your list, until I realized that, wait a moment, I'm not doing B2C anymore. I'm not, nobody on my list. I don't have anything that I could sell them. Why is it important to have a big list? And even if I would sell to them, why would I have a big list if I don't have a relationship with them and they don't trust me, and then they wouldn't buy from me? So I think also, and the same is true for followers and all of that. So
yes,
chasing these KPIs that someone thought through maybe at some point, but for their own benefit, we just copy them.
Of course, yeah. And I remember in my last few years of Procter & Gamble marketing, I was in digital, and it was just social media was coming. So it was all about getting followers on your page and all this, that was huge. And we were doing apps and all these silly things. And then Instagram went through a phase where I think you had to have 10,000 followers in order to get certain benefits. And, that there are lots of built-in things to make you want to get those followers. And of course, LinkedIn, which is where I'm most active, it's all about, okay, have this hook to get people to do this, and the algorithm. There's been so much talk about the algorithm now, and you've got to chase and so on. But what reassures me is I have a couple of colleagues. I mean, I've got 15,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is a lot for some, but it's not as much as many others, of course. And I have a friend who has 100,000 followers on Instagram. And now she's shifted some things. So now she is getting the sales, and she's got a book and all sorts of amazing things. But she said, you know what, great, your reel's gone viral. It doesn't reflect sales. And another colleague who has 40,000 followers on LinkedIn, thanks to following all these hacks. But actually, the content he's putting out, a bit like your newsletter, is not aligned to the business he wants to build and the office he's doing, right? So it's like, what's the point of having that? And in fact, for the kind of business I want to build and my clients, we don't want to build an empire. We don't need thousands and thousands of people, right? You just need the right people, especially if you're working B2B, a handful of people, couple contracts, and you're happy, right? So it's so hard to unlearn the chasing those, okay, I've got to get the 10,000 followers, and then I've got to get the next 1,000, and I've got to get, oh my gosh, people are constantly saying, I didn't get enough likes on this LinkedIn post. So what? You've lost sight of what matters. I'm building a business. Yeah. If you're not making the income, that's something we need to look at. But I mean, likes, comments, share, who cares?
And I wonder whether it's a part of our brain that just loves the distraction from doing the difficult work. So there's this, there's a fantastic book. It's maybe 2 decades. It's old. It's The Working Dad or something like that, about people in corporate who create tasks just to distract themselves from the actual work that they have to do, but that feels uncomfortable. For instance, I need to make this phone call, and I feel uncomfortable making phone calls. Oh, let me do this before. And then as a kind of reassurance that it's important, they involve other people in these necessary tasks.
It's to build on that, it's the busy work, right? So in corporate, it's the backed up meetings. You go through the day and you think you've done lots of stuff because you're tired and you've had lots of meetings, but have you actually done your projects and move the needle? My clients always say, my most productive work is at home, of course, because then I can actually do the deep work, the strategy, the thinking I need to do. If you're just in meetings, for us as solopreneurs as well, it's so easy to tick off things on your to-do list. Whereas actually, hang on a second, I want to write a book. Well, that's not going to come from you answering emails and ticking off little things. That needs to be right. I need to block a day and I used to sit in a cafe with a cake and coffee, no Wi-Fi, or as you said, I need to make, I call them momentum moves. The things that actually will move the needle in your business are messaging a possible client, connecting with someone, replying, sending the proposal, following up with someone who said they were in, but they haven't done. Those are the things that I don't want to chase and I don't want to be difficult and so on, right? But actually, it is professional, coming back to your language, professionalism is, you've said you want to work with me, we've said, follow up. That's normal. A business would do that. But because we're our own solo business, it's so caught up in our identity and the personal brand, and it's me and I'm selling me, and what if they don't like me, and there's all that stuff going on
and all the money issues that come up. That's too expensive, and am I worth it? I don't want to appear needy or greedy, so I don't send the invoice right away, but you're waiting for.
Well, that's crazy. Can you imagine even, I don't know, Netflix or an accountant or a plumber would not just go, I don't want to feel needy. I don't want to come across as being too desperate. I'm not going to send the invoice, right? We laugh. It's not as easy as that. But some of those things need to be almost, I have software that automates sending and reminding people about the invoice, right? So then that takes the emotion out. It's just a natural thing that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's about the hacks. I remember the first 2 years on LinkedIn, I had an automation that would post my content because I found it ways too frightening to push the post button.
But that's great because it separates you from the thing, right? And it suddenly goes out, I've written this. That's a bit vulnerable, but you kind of distance yourself from it. So it's okay, it's gone out and it's,
exactly.
That's a great little act. Yeah.
And then I'm wondering, at some point we need to shift, I think, from whom or why we need the appreciation and the permission. Because I think for me, I always had this idea that I want to be a solopreneur and was following Pat Flynn and thinking about digital marketing and all these kind of things. And in the meantime, by almost accident, I built a training agency. I have a handful of clients, make enough money. This year I realized, I don't need to be busy to be successful.
Yes.
Suddenly, and then I had to fight my own demons of taking a day off just because I don't have any work to do. It's all done. And feeling good with it. I could go to the spa today. Instead of, let me cramp something on LinkedIn because I need to be visible there and I need to work on my followers. Right?
Yeah.
Actually, why?
Yeah, the why is an interesting one. And I feel like you're very lucky there or skilled if you did it intentionally, but a lot of us don't end up with a successful business model by accident, right? Because as I said earlier, what happens is we follow Pat Flynn, we follow this guy over here, Justin Welsh, and then there's Daniel Priestley. I've got to do this. But their vision is very different. It tends to be men, let's be honest. It's the kind of marketing bro, it's the hacks, it's the scaling, it's the automation and so on. And then we try to do all those things. So then I end up with, I've got the list and I've got to do TikTok and now Substack, and I've also got the podcast and I've got to do more video. And, and you're posting every day. This is a sense I have, but each individual post is like, meh. Whereas actually what I'd like to do next year is pull back and do fewer but better and give myself permission to not post every day, but go, okay, what's the actual message? Can I do something a bit longer, more quality, especially in this age now with AI and everyone just blends into it. It's so easy to pump out content. It's like, tick, yep, I've done the thing. But as you said before, the harder thing is to think, who am I actually trying to get to? What's a bit of a controversial message to disrupt their thinking? What's my point of view here? That takes more time, energy, and vulnerability to put more of yourself into it, but that's what's going to get you the results versus just ticking the box and posting something bland that any ChatGPT bot could have written, right?
Yeah, and bringing your own personal voice, your own personal brand into it, and that's actually interesting how we collectively, it's almost like a public good problem. Where collectively we're using AI and pushing more and more content out, and then feeling all collectively more and more overwhelmed. So if everyone would decide, okay, let's do less of higher quality, it would benefit everyone because nobody has time to read all of that anyway.
Well, it becomes AI posting and AI commenting. And at some point, no one's actually, what's
so professional.
A bit sad with LinkedIn, very professional. Someone mentioned as well with meetings, more and more people are just sending in their note taker to a meeting. But it's just, okay, but if you don't need to be there, does anyone need to be in that meeting? And there's a point to which you and I aren't here. We've just sent our note takers, and then AI can talk to AI, and we can go off to the cinema and it's all fine. But maybe that meeting is not so important then if you don't even have to be there. Are you ever going to read those notes? It's absurd. So many of these things, again, it always feels like the emperor's new clothes to me. It seems so obvious that the emperor's naked, but everyone's like, no, we've got to keep going to the meetings, got to keep pumping out the AI post. We've got to, it's just the hamster wheel, the autopilot that kind of, as you said, the collective momentum is in that direction, and we don't stop to go, hang on, hey, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And then I think it's when you're in the corporate wheel, it might be more difficult than to break out because you have to be in these meetings, and it's unprofessional to ask, why do I actually have to be there? And I don't understand the purpose. I don't understand.
But this to me is, and there are clients who are meeting experts, and it's absurd that that's needed because, again, it seems so obvious. Meeting 101 that I learned 2 decades ago in my corporate, well, you have to have a purpose for the meeting. You have to have a clear outcome. You need to have the right people in the room. And it's actually professional to say, if you send me an invite, I don't just accept it. And some people accept, this is a whole other topic, but accept and then they're double booked and they don't turn up or they don't accept or reject, It's just, you say, okay, Miriam, thanks so much for the invite. Would you mind sharing what the objectives are and what my role would be? It takes a little bit more time, a bit of discomfort, but then you have to then go, oh, okay, no, actually, I don't need you in the meeting. Or yes, this is really important. Let's find a time when you can come. And that for me, in corporate is so important, but especially in your own business. And that's taken me time as well, to not have to please and to, I'm lucky because I'm kind of role modeling for my clients what it's like to have boundaries and so on. So it's sort of, it works really well. If I said, no worries, I'll send you that on Sunday morning, that would be sort of disconnected with my message of, having boundaries and working X hours and so on. But I've always found that people will respect your boundaries. If they don't, is that someone you want to be working with in the future anyway? It's not really aligned. And being a little bit more assertive and saying yes, but, or no, but, or maybe let me check before just agreeing to everything. That's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for resentment. And especially, as we said again before, when you're building your own thing, you've got no one else to blame, unfortunately, but yourself. So you may project and say, oh, it's the clients and it's the industry and the market is tough, so I have to. Yes. And you have more agency than you realize, and you can set those boundaries, hold true to them. Of course, be flexible sometimes, but if the exception becomes the rule, that's when it doesn't become sustainable.
Yeah. And I think the message we are sending to ourselves, that we are crossing our boundaries and not keeping our own commitments, I think that's the worst thing, because then we basically teach ourselves that we cannot be trusted.
Yeah, we can't be trusted. We lose trust in ourselves, which is such a sad thing. That's so, so important. If you said, I'm going to work out this morning, okay, do it. Or you go, no, I've decided I'm not going to do that because, I'm not feeling very well and so on. And that's an intentional choice. But absolutely, if you see something pop up every time and you just go, then your whole system doesn't work.
And I think the boundaries is another one. So important. I'm glad that you mentioned it, that you have to role model it for your clients, because I think learning boundaries is maybe the one thing that nobody teaches us. When we're lucky, we learn it from our parents. Yeah. But otherwise, we actually always learn to cross our boundaries. And I remember that in the beginning, clients usually ask for, oh, shall we have a weekly meeting then? So we signed a big contract. Yes, it's a big contract. We will have a lot of work together, but I don't need to meet you every week. And I don't want to have this placeholder in my calendar. So I tell them, I don't do that. Here's a link. Whenever you need my time, even at short notice, you can.
Nice. Okay.
But I don't do standing meetings. And I think it also woke them up.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. It's so easy to just repeat what you're used to. It's company culture to
They're so in that kind of head down autopilot. Exactly. And the dynamic there when you work with companies that they treat you almost like an employee.
Yes.
And I love how you said that. So you need to educate them because you are the external expert. If they want you to be an employee, they need to pay you pension and benefits and so on, right? And then you're fine. Or if you want to pay me 100K, okay, I'll come to a few meetings. But absolutely, it's defining the scope, having really clear criteria. This is how I work. We'll have a kickoff meeting in person, fine, whatever. And then, at these stages of and then of course, yes, anything additional would be an additional cost or anything like that, and just reaffirming those boundaries. So often it's absurd because it's our business. And again, it's just not normal, but it feels normal to them because they're in that world. And because we don't know anything different either, it's so easy to just go, oh gosh, I've got to do all these extra things. And before you know it, that the 10,000 or whatever they're giving you for this project is spread out over like 10,000 hours, and suddenly it's not as appealing anymore, right? You're working late nights, you're working weekends, you're resenting every call. So it's either charging then, as one of my colleagues calls it, the pain in the tax. And then if you want to pay me 500,000, then no problem, I'll probably do a lot for you. But generally, actually, no, this is, for this is what's included, and anything else would be additional. And again, of course, we can be flexible. And if there's an exceptional team pulling together for an urgent deadline, we want to be a team player and so on. But if it's, as you say, coming to all these meetings where you're not needed and you're not adding value, you're not getting anything out of it, that's like not worth it for you or for them.
Yeah. And charging high enough fees so that you don't resent your clients. I think
so I talk about with pricing and integrity rate, which is where you want to be, and a resentment rate where you don't want to go lower. So we won't always get, if we work out that I want to get 5K a day rate or whatever it is, you may not always get that. Sometimes you get 10,000 for a project, sometimes you'll get 2,000, but you want to make sure you don't go below the thing that means that you'll hate every minute of it. You'll have to give up time, with your children, with your partner, with whatever, cancel your gym class or whatever to do this thing for what? For not enough money. So that's really, really important.
Yeah. I was curious about, so your podcast is Reimagining Success. And I would be curious to hear from you what we get wrong about success, because I think success and the KPI is also something very professional. How busy we are defines how successful we are and how much status we have. I'm so busy, I don't have time. So, what have you learned about success through your own career, but also through your podcast?
I think a couple of things I discovered early on when I was starting to research. Of course, the first thing you do is look at the dictionary definition, like in an essay. And the definition was, of course, fame, fortune, But then it was the accomplishment of an aim or a purpose. And for me, that's so interesting because that's what I bring now, the intentionality. If your aim or purpose is to climb the corporate ladder and to make it to SVP and so on, and I don't know, build a portfolio of blah, 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 and so on. Yes, that is success. And quitting that job or being made redundant, of course, is failure. But if your definition of success rather is, I want to be feel fulfilled and doing meaningful work with interesting people, and work part-time hours. So I can, again, I'm very mum-centric at the moment. My kids are 5 and 6, but, pick them up, etc. We've got the school concert this afternoon. Then the definition becomes very different. So most of us, I would say, haven't thought about this, and it feels really self-indulgent. I've run a few sessions recently about reimagining success, and inevitably it's a lot of women. And I think the language sounds quite soft when you're, it's not about those goals, the SMART goals. They have to be specific and measurable and whatever else the other letters are, When I first did my coach training, I was all about goals. And I wrote a bucket list of 100 things to do before you die. I was like, I've got to go to these countries and I want to publish a book and get followers, I'm pretty sure I said. And I think I had meet Leonardo DiCaprio on there, which I think I should probably remove now. It's not quite as important to me 15 years later. Yeah, should change that to someone else. Maybe Jonathan Bailey would be my choice now. But yeah, so it was so goal oriented. And that helped me at the time because I think I'd lost sight of, I wasn't excited anymore. I was just on this conveyor belt and in my comfort zone. For the last few years, I've been very content. Basically, I'm working, doing interesting stuff. I'm with my family. We've built a house here. I've got the sea right there living, and I've published a few books. It's kind of, it's kind of everything I wanted in a way. And again, as we talked about with the podcast, I'm finding it exciting to begin tentatively setting a few more goals. But I think the tension that you have to hold, and it's so difficult, is to be content and complete as you are, and to hold this other goal. So it's not that when I publish the next book, I'll finally be happy, or when I get those followers, or when I make this much money. That doesn't mean you can't have those goals, but it's not that I am, incomplete until, and it could be until I get married, until I have the children. There's a big, I have quite a few clients who are childless by choice, for example, and they talk about how that pressure is there always, and there's so many assumptions as to what success looks like, not just professionally at work, but also in your personal life. And so it's unpacking that. So I've had to go full circle to like no goals at all, to coming back to, okay, hang on, what are the goals? And it's more intentions, it's how I want to feel, it's things that, and understanding that the journey is meaningful. It's not the actual ticking thing. And I think it was Simon Sinek who talked recently about, you could publish a book with AI, right? 2 minutes up on Amazon. Doesn't change your life. Like, you probably won't make money anyway, but even if it does, so what? The process of doing the hard things, sitting down, researching, writing, editing, and then, wow, I've done this hard thing. Look at this. I've got this book in my hand that I've written. That's the magic. And whether that's on a bestseller list or not, that's sort of by the by, but it's the process that makes you grow and feels fulfilling. So if, the whole, could you give me $10 million today? Yeah, that'd be quite nice. But working for that and maybe making only 1 million would probably be more, or even 100,000, would actually bring me more fulfillment and success than just, basically winning a lottery ticket or someone giving you, hey, here's an AI written book or whatever that might be.
Yeah. And I wonder whether this is because through the process we acquire things that nobody can take away from us. So if I sweat and cry through the process of publishing a book, then there's so many things along the way you learn about yourself, about the process, you grow in that. And even if you don't publish the book or something happens, nobody can ever take this away. Whereas if you write it with AI and you put it out there and then it disappears for some reason, you have nothing because you
don't even remember
what's written in there.
Exactly. I saw someone the other day on LinkedIn, and it's not the usual content I see, but someone celebrated that they bought a Lamborghini, and I thought, come on, I feel a bit judgy, but I felt a little bit sorry for her, and I just thought, when I traveled, when I was quitting my job back in 2013, I went to South America, and I saw all these, the Mayans and the old temples and the ruins and things, and they would bury you. Obviously, they'd kill the wife and the dog and the child or whatever, bury them with the emperor, whatever it was, and then put all the gold and stuff in there, right? But I'm like, really? Are we going to bury them with a Lamborghini and with the Instagram followers and their Rolex watches and whatever? Like, really? It seems so obvious that stuff doesn't really matter. We know all this, that older people are saying, I regret having worked so hard. I wish I'd been kinder to myself. I wish I'd spent more time with loved ones. And I feel almost embarrassed saying it. Life is short. It feels like such a platitude. But isn't that the most important insight to have, and focus on what really matters and the people you really love, rather than get caught up in this stuff that it really doesn't matter. Beyond a certain place. Obviously, this is a privileged discussion where we have enough money to eat and we have shelter and security and so on. So I don't mean to, trivialize that. It's a tough time right now with cost of living and so on, but really beyond that, all the studies say you're not going to be happier. It just brings more pressure and risk. Elon Musk with his trillionaire upcoming whatever, when he gets all that money, it's just, when is enough would be my question.
And there's so many research that show that after beyond a certain threshold, our happiness is actually back to baseline where we were.
But the bigger thing around success, I suppose, is rather that we haven't, as I said, it's quite an indulgent thing to think about. And we either haven't thought about it at all, or we've just adopted someone else's definition. So our parents, that's so interesting, I find, whether your parents were academics or if they were in corporate, or if they were successful entrepreneurs or not successful entrepreneurs, and how that affects you. School, society, your friends. It's so much so that, and then now as entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, it's again those big gurus who are showing us this is what it looks like. We're doing this, we're investing in that, and we've got big followers, and we're keynote speakers, and we're best-selling authors, and that becomes another thing. Like, oh, okay, now I've got to chase these things instead of the corporate ladder. So it's very easy to go from one hamster wheel into another one.
Yeah, and then satisfying all these desires from within It's also hard work. I just came back from a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It is hard work to find this kind of inner peace.
But that's also scary, right? 10 days, I think most people go, wow, it sounds incredible, but how could I possibly? I've got so much to do. And then as we take away that busyness, it is scary, right? Because having my days when I don't have any calls and things, that sounds amazing, right? Because wow, you could record stuff and strategize and do all this thing, but suddenly you've got these hours stretching ahead of me. It's like, what do I do? So it's very easy I'll just reply to some emails and I'll just do this thing. And suddenly the day is gone and you haven't done anything. Whereas if you've got a day when you've got, I've got this call with Miriam and then I'm going to do this, and that's it's a different energy. So it's really scary to have just a blank slate. What on earth do you do with that, right?
It is. And this was because there are all the thoughts coming up. And so the first 4 days I was just processing 10 years of unprocessed emotions.
Well, also because we're always on our phone, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, avoiding, I was seeing as I was scrolling this morning was, avoiding difficult conversations with our partner because we're just both kind of scrolling, or you bring it to the toilet with you and I have it here. It's crazy. Whereas in the 80s, we'd sit on a journey and just look out the window and we'd talk, we'd play board games or do a puzzle, and there's no silence now. It's just always, and as a solopreneur who loves what I do, there's always more. Oh, I'm going to just think about this. And what if I am this program and I could create this, and it's exciting. So it's easy to tell myself it's fine to blur my boundaries and work a lot. But it does mean then, it's very hard, but especially when you enjoy your work. And of course, when your income is tied to your work directly, it's hard to set that. No, that's enough because there's always more you could do.
Yeah. And then always the question, whom does it serve?
Yeah. And if it doesn't serve you, then why are you even considering it, really? Yeah. But that's the inherited scripts again, I think, from school. Working hard is a sign of success and you'll do better. And you can't ask for help. You can't say no because that makes you difficult. All these underlying subconscious, often scripts that we've been programmed with.
Yeah. And on the other hand, so busy because hard to get. And
I'm so busy and important. Yes, exactly. Well, do you know what I shared with a friend the other day? I had I thought, a stressful day, and I can't remember what it was, but in fact, I was going for a walk with a friend the first thing. I was like, I've agreed to go for a walk and I don't want to cancel, so we've got that. And then I had like a podcasting and a couple of client calls. And so my friend said, oh, wow, that sounds like a really easy day. And I felt a bit insulted because for me, that was a big day. I've got this thing and then I need to. And I think I was baking the cake for my son's birthday and also had a couple of calls. But for her in the banking world, hers is like back-to-back meetings, client travel, whatever, from 9 till 6. She thought I was very lazy for only, being stressed about having a couple of calls. So it's funny how your bar moves. And I was like, oh, I'm not as important. And when I do go to school drop off in like a nicer clothes because I've got a meeting in London or something, then I do feel more important. So as much as I say I've unlearned a lot of this stuff, it's so easy to, check me out. I'm doing this keynote in London, don't you know? I'm so important. Yeah. I've got this podcast interview with Miriam, it's easy to latch onto those things.
It is. What's an unprofessional thing that you would still advise others to do?
I do think it comes back to this saying no and not over-delivering. And in fact, I heard the other day, you can go the extra mile, but don't go too. It's fine I want to do an excellent job. And of course, you've paid for this program, or I'm working with you as my corporate client and I'm going to do an excellent job. They're not asking you to, they shouldn't be asking you to, and you certainly shouldn't be asking you to work late into the night. Also, by the way, as we know, that's not going to, certainly for me, I'm tired and I'll just make mistakes and the work will get worse. So far better to be, bring your best A game, do the thing, set the boundary for yourself and for them. So it's understanding that it's the classic, working more, even though the whole corporate is based on this whole return to office mandate and working longer hours. The Silicon Valley now is the 996, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And that's just not even compatible with people who have any kind of health condition, life, children, caring responsibilities. It's absurd. But also the studies show us that actually we're only productive for about 4 hours a day. So I'm very much now about 4 hours a day, 20 hours a week. For me, with the kids, it means term time. So it's like 40 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And that's the natural container. And as we know, the smaller we make the container, actually, the more focused we are. Back to that long day I had where I didn't get anything done, right? If I've only got 2 hours, I've got 1.5 days left until the holidays. Now I'm going to be like, boom, boom, boom. I'm going to finally do all the things that I hadn't done before. So it might feel that setting that boundary, saying no, is unprofessional. But in fact, that's the most professional thing, because you're in integrity with yourself, with your business, with your family, and you're going to deliver your best work for them. If you agree and overcommit, something's got to give. And either it's you or it will be the work. If I say yes to every client on everything, I'm not going to be able to deliver my good work. 100% say no to myself, but also, in fact, ironically, you're then compromising the quality of your work for your clients ultimately.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. So much food for thought. And I love the 4 hours per day, 20 hours per week.
I've always been reluctant to put such a clear number on it, but I'm really seeing more and more, academic justification for it. And it's something really tangible that we can grasp. It means for my pricing, if I know, then I always take the number of 100,000, whatever, a year, then I know I'm going to work, it's 1,000 hours, half of that's billable, that very easily gives me numbers to work with.
Yeah.
And also it means that you can't spend 4 hours tweaking a LinkedIn post or choosing between 3 shades of beige for your website, right? Because if I've only got 4 hours, I need to make damn sure that I'm doing the client follow-ups, creating the video, recording the podcast, doing the project, whatever that looks like. So even if in reality I have the kids for, I've got longer days sometimes when they have after school clubs. So my Mondays, Tuesdays now are longer. It might be shorter other days. As you said, you might have, I don't get lions, unfortunately, but you might go to the cinema in the middle of the day or whatever it is like that, right? Playing with it. It's not going to be you have to work only 4 hours a day, but I think it's an interesting thought experiment, if nothing else, to ask yourself, if you did only work 4 hours a day, what would need to change? What would you have to stop doing? What could you delegate either to a person or to AI automation? And what are the things that you have to absolutely make sure you do to grow your business and to get to, or even just to maintain the business, right? But to hit your income. I think it's a really interesting container. And we all know creativity comes from limitation, right? So rather than, what could I do if I had more time? We're never going to have more time. So far better to go, what if I had less, and work from there.
Love that. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you, Miriam. Love those really thoughtful questions and always things to consider and to keep working on myself as well. So really appreciate the conversation.
This was a conversation without the script. Now it's your turn. I'm Miriam Hadness, and this has been Unprofessionalism.